The Lost Alaskans. Did you know before the 1960s, those deemed to be suffering with mental illness in Alaska were often shipped to the lower 48, some never to be seen again.
That would all change with the construction of a new facility here in Anchorage. In this week's Storytime with Aunt Phil, author Laurel Downing Bill gives us a history lesson on the API.
The Alaska Psychiatric Institute opened back in 1962 and forever changed the way Alaska treated those with mental illness.
But Laurel, before that, where exactly in the lower 48 were Alaskans with mental illness sent to?
Before 1962, Alaskans were sent down to Portland, Oregon to a facility called Morningside Hospital. Now, Morningside was created by a Dr. Henry Waldo Coe in 1899, and he was under contract with the U.S. Department of Interior to care for Alaskans that had been deemed mentally ill. Now, in this day and age, the mentally ill were considered to be criminals, and they were arrested, and so they would be bundled up then and shipped by, sled and ship and train down to Portland, Oregon. Between 1905 and 1962, about 3,500 Alaskans were sent down south.
And not all of those people sent there suffered from mental illness.
That's correct. We had some instances through records that show some folks that had tuberculosis, some orphans, even some missionaries decided to arrange to send a 17-year-old boy from Anvik to Morningside. He was suffering from epilepsy, and his family never ever knew what happened to him after that.
So how did they determine mental illness back then?
Well, it was a simple process. If somebody thought you were mentally ill, a jury of 6 people would hold a court and they would deem whether you were sane or insane. And if you were deemed insane, then you were tossed into jail to await shipment south. That was just crazy when you think about it. They were housed with criminals at the same time. And then the deputy marshal would put a notice in the newspaper looking for an honest person who might want an all-expense-paid trip down to Seattle that would then escort the mentally ill and the criminals south.
You mentioned they would go by ship, by dog sled. Conditions back then from Alaska to Portland probably pretty tough.
Yeah, and those folks would have to stay in the jails waiting for the crews to get together to take them north. And sometimes they'd have to wait a year even to get their trial. But once they were convicted of being insane, then they were taken with the criminals by stagecoach or dog team from Fairbanks down to Valdez, 300 miles away, and oftentimes in minus 50-degree weather. And then sometimes if a patient was acting, quite violently toward this treatment, they would just strap him to the cart and continue on their way. So it was pretty barbaric times.
Well, luckily, times have changed. We have come a long way. In fact, we are in the newest API building, built back in 2005, right across the street from the original building, again, built in 1962, a place where people can come, be evaluated and treated, unlike back in the day. Yeah, wow, amazing that they just shipped people out of state. Maybe you saw them again, maybe you didn't. In most cases, you didn't. We'll have more with Aunt Phil next Thursday. You can get her Alaskan history lesson every week right here on Daybreak.